Hello, everybody, and happy St. Patty's Day on this sort of misty gray morning, sort of straight from Ireland, I would say. And for all of you who celebrate, I don't see too much green out there on the Zoom. We're so happy to have you join us today. I think it's going to be a fun day with Dr. Finucane and Dr. Delicacios. And so without further ado, I will pass this over to Susan Edgman-Levitan, and welcome. Happy to have you once again.
Thank you. I just want to add my welcome and happy St. Patrick's Day. I'm Susan Edgman-Levitan, and I'm the director of the Stokel Center for Primary Care Innovation at Mass General. So we've got a really interesting presentation today, two presentations. But before we get started, I just want to go over our regular housekeeping rules. So we have muted everybody to eliminate any background noise. So we can't hear anybody except for the speakers. To view the speaker on your full screen rather than in the little boxes, you can go to the gallery view in the upper right-hand corner of your screen and click on that. And you can either click full screen or gallery view if you want to see everybody who's participating on the town hall today. If for some reason your picture gets jumpy or out of sync, sometimes that happens when there are a lot of people on the Zoom. And sometimes it happens if your internet connection changes a little. Go down to the lower left-hand corner and you'll see a little video camera. Click stop video. It will turn your picture off, and sometimes that really helps your connection. I'm sure that there are going to be a lot of questions today. So because you're all muted, please use the chat feature that's right in the middle of the bottom ribbon across the bottom of the screen. And I just want to remind everybody that anything you write in the chat, we can all see. So we really want to alert people that you don't want to share or ask any personal medical questions, because you'll be sharing them with all of us. But if you do have a medical question, please reach out to your doctor directly. We look forward to your questions, and we're going to do our best to answer all of them. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and introduce our speakers. Today, we have our speaker, Dr. Tom Finucane, who I see, which is wonderful. Welcome. And Dr. Finucane is a geriatrician and a senior consultant at MGH. In 2018, he retired as professor emeritus after 30 years at Johns Hopkins University School of Medicine in Baltimore. He and his wife, Dr. Robin McKenzie, also a senior faculty at Johns Hopkins, moved to Boston to help their three daughters who were raising small families. He put in his bio that this was a lot of work, and I have a feeling that what he meant is it was so much work helping with taking care of the children that it was easier to go back to work. So he came back to work in 2019 and joined the Division of Palliative Care and Geriatric Medicine at MGH. He's primarily an educator with our students and our house staff and our fellows. And his primary research interests are the overtreatment of older adults and the undertreatment of older adults. And that may sound a little odd, but we had a little discussion before we started today where we talked about that's actually what almost all of our doctors are constantly doing, is balancing what is low value and no value care for people with what is the kind of care that they really need that will benefit them the most, and how do people make smart decisions about that. So he's going to be talking with us today about how the use of supplements fits into some of this decision making. And then we have our favorite, Dr. Helen Delicacios, who is a primary care doctor at Mass General in the Beacon Hill practice. And she's also the nutrition educator in the Division of General Internal Medicine. And she's going to be sharing, I'm sure, a very delicious recipe with us today. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Finucane. Let's get started.
Well, thank you, Susan. I'm going to try to share a screen and see what happens. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm sorry for this confusion. The first part of the talk today is about brain and Helen is going to take up most of the good time, but this is about brain boosters and dietary supplements, and then other things that actually might improve your health. And I want to start out way back, like 1 billion years ago, maybe more, a couple of billion, between 1 and 2 billion years ago. Something that looks like an amoeba ate a bacterium, and neither one could kill the other, so they decided on peaceful coexistence, and they became chloroplasts, and they are the basis of almost all plant life on the planet. They're tiny little discs, they're billionths per leaf, and they're descended from that single amoeba that ate that single bacterium. They create all the oxygen in the atmosphere, virtually. These are all roughly speaking, and almost all of the energy. So I was out walking in the Arboretum, this was last year, and I was walking with a biologist. It was a day a little like today, a little on the chilly side, kind of partly cloudy. And then suddenly the sun broke through, and the biologist turned to me and said, you know, when the sun came out on this woods, billions, hundreds of billions of chloroplasts turned slightly so that they didn't get too much sun, but they optimized all the sun's energy that they could take without hurting themselves. And I want to propose to you that life is really amazing. Things are happening all the time that we don't recognize, and many things we recognize and don't understand. What's astonishing is human life. Humans, if you're 62 years old and your pulse is 60, your heart has beat 2 billion times already. And if this is a healthy human being, and if you miss a couple of hundred beats, that could be the end of your life. But these hearts just keep doing it perfectly. We take it for granted. We don't really know how that can be so reliable. When you walk into a room and you say, now, why in the heck did I walk in here? Your brain is you start searching for the reason, and you try to backtrack what is in this room. What were you doing before? What was the conversation? Your brain is in overdrive, and we just don't recognize what a fabulous organ the brain is. I have been around some babies lately, and when they learn language, it is a hoot, but it's also a tremendous computational feat. They learn thousands and thousands of words in no time. And I propose to you also that if you're looking for brain exercise, Sudoku is to a conversation with another person as, you know, bubble gum is to a steak dinner, making real decisions, changing what you're going to say based on the slightest inflection from the person you're talking to. It's really a workout for the brain. So first, life is astonishing. That's part one. Part two is aging. This curve happens to be on the x-axis age, and on the y-axis is the number of hours it took the fastest woman who ever ran a marathon at that age, the world record woman's marathon by age. And you can see a couple of things about this graph. Age is highly regulated. I'm sorry, aging is highly regulated. There is no time when 5 years go by and somebody speeds up. It's also gradual in midlife, and then it tends to accelerate in late life. This graph could be, if you change the axes, and plotted instead the lifespan of a dog, or the lifespan of a human, or the lifespan of a worm, a lot of them look like this. There's a lot of dying at some point in the age, and the chance of dying accelerates. If you look at people trying to summit Mount Everest, the chance they'll get to the top looks like this, although there's nobody past 80 or so, past 70 really. If you're trying to summit Everest, not everybody gets up and down. And the older you are, even though you're perfectly trained, well geared, the chance of success, the chance of failure rises quickly with age. Now, so this shows that age is graded, highly regulated, and progressive, and it looks inevitable. There's so many graphs that looks, this is called the Gompertz function, and it describes lots and lots of behaviors and events with respect to aging. Now, the good news is the amount, how the rate of change is pretty small. The women's world marathon record is at the age of 40 is 2 hours and 23 minutes. For a woman who's 55, the world record is 2 hours and 50 minutes. So that means in those 15 years, since the marathon is about 26 miles, and this is a 27-minute difference, your rate of running the marathon slowed down only about 1 minute per mile. And if you do a little bit of arithmetic, that means that per stride, the 55-year-old strides at about 0.03 seconds per stride more slowly. 3/100ths of a second is how much slower you get during this time. But once again, it's not a mistake. It's happening at every age. And this is people who by selecting master athletes, you're excluding illness, you're excluding recent injuries, you're excluding other things that are more common with age and can affect things like and affect your performance. So in elite people, things slow down and you get weaker and your memory slows down. That's normal human aging. I'm going to waste 1 second of your time to remind you that the fastest woman, Bridget Kosgei, ran in 2:14. At the age of 25, she was quite slender and she had 7-year-old twins when she set this world record. So my father always said we should do away with Father's Day and have 2 Mother's Days every year. And I want to endorse that idea. But she is really something. I think we have to acknowledge, though, among ourselves here, that aging is a season of slowing down and loss. That's part of the deal. And appearance changes, and in a youth-obsessed culture, the appearance looks like it's less youthful. Aches and pains come upon us, and we know those doggone 20-year-olds just get out of bed and feel great every day. Sex life, weight gain, memory, all are changing with time. And we'll come to the reason why appearance is at the top of this list. That's not legit in my opinion, in this context, but I'll show you why in a second. That's a very important change with aging. In summary, though, we don't like that. And people want to avoid that, change it, slow it down, reverse it. We want to be young, and especially in this culture at this time. But it's really been going on since antiquity. There are lots of legends about how to stay young. Ponce de Leon this may not be true, but he's well known as a guy who was looking for the fountain of youth. And he crossed the Atlantic in a kind of a small boat twice, coming back to the Americas to look for the fountain of youth. So there's a powerful drive among a lot of people in historical times. And there have been a variety of different attempted solutions. One of them, for example, was a Russian guy named Voronov, and his plan was, or his practice was, to thinly slice the testicle of mice and implant them in men. Now, a lot of this went on for a long time in the late 19th century and early 20th century. And we know now that that foreign body would be instantly rejected and have absolutely no effect on the body. But what you will see is there are plenty of testimonials that once Dr. Voronov operated on me, I was a new man. Men are strange, but I was a new man. I could do things I hadn't been doing for years. It really worked for me. And it's a lot like the testimonials that you see now in advertisements for products that make you younger. Another thing that the Wolverhampton Wolves, a soccer club in in England, tried this. It seems their coach got hooked on Voronov's ideas, and here's the testimonials. A guy scored 4 goals against Liverpool. How could anybody be that fabulous? And it turned out the guy had been injected with monkey testicles. And this is not a long time ago. A lot of people who are in this conversation were alive at that time. This is not ancient history. But people are always trying crazy things to make themselves prettier, smarter, faster, and more able to score goals against Liverpool. This drove sales for a while. Varnaf was no longer with us, but his disciples became busy again after this event. Now it's really hitting high gear. This is from and people are studying this. They see older people who want to be young, and they're angling about how to get their money. The global anti-aging market is going to grow from 190 billion to 420 billion by 2030. That's global now. And the United States might account for about 10% of that. But that is a lot of money. And their advertising skills are non-pareil. They really can do, they're studying your clicks. They know what you're thinking about. Your history is available to them. And here are some things they know. Consumers are opting for home use products and devices. See if this doesn't sound like you or people you know. Booming geriatric population is the strongest driver for market sales. And this is the reason to list appearance first. And anti-wrinkle products witness the highest sales growth. Generation X is the largest user, by the way, that's 40-year-olds. A very lucrative market is Asian Pacific Basin products all the time. So remember that you're out there in a marketplace. They want you to buy their products, and they know how to work you. And these are the things they're selling. How do we know these products work or that they're safe? We don't really. The FDA is not authorized, not allowed to review diet. The Federal Trade Commission reviews the advertising. The NIH has an Office of Dietary Supplements, but these things come to market often with no knowledge of whether they work and very little data about safety. There's a product now that's been in litigation for many years, and it's largely because the company itself failed to show that the randomized trial that was done by the company failed to show significant improvement in the treatment group over the placebo group in any of the 9 computerized cognitive tasks. They've settled a large class action lawsuit. They're still in court, though. They've changed their label. They're in court for years defending against the FTC and the New York Attorney General. Anybody want to guess what that product is? I understand. Yes.
Prevagen.
Prevagen. So if when you're thinking about your memory slowing down and you start to take pills, that's like your phone is slowing down. And you say, well, I think I'll just give a squirt of WD-40 into the port and see if that helps to speed it up. And now when we take pills, there's a very close similarity there. We're taking pills, we have no idea what they do or where they go. We're sold on the idea by clever marketers, and there's a ton of fraud going on. But this one is kind of funny because it's made out of a synthetic amino protein that's mimics a jellyfish protein. So you can see in this picture that brain is actually translucent. In fact, jellyfish don't have brains. So we're going to put a piece of an animal that doesn't even have a brain in our system and hope that it makes our brain function better. That's not WD-40. That's like squirting marinara sauce in the port. You might as well see if your iPhone will pick up after that. As of 2019, no scientific publication gives any independent data about safety or efficacy. The one pot trial that you can find on the web, if you look around Madison Memory Study, a study sponsored by the vendor, performed by an employee of the vendor, and published in an in-house publication by the vendor. This is an extended form of advertisement that's disguised as science and has nothing in common with actual science. In actual science, you do everything you can to be sure you're not wrong. In vending, you make up stuff and you study your audience and pitch it to them. That's right. So Susan knew this one. Preficent. Sound good? Why would we lie? It supports higher profits, etc. So now suppose you made your money selling nutritional supplements, but most of your customers were already overweight. How are you going to sell? What could you possibly sell in the way of a nutritional supplement to an overweight population? And there's an answer to that, actually. Ensure Light, a caloric supplement without too many calories in it. That's how finely they study the market. They're not missing the trick here. So herbal and dietary supplements, implausible. Jellyfish for your brain. Jellyfish don't have brains. Poorly regulated. The FDA cannot regulate safety or efficacy. Expensive, yes. Dangerous, yes. Ineffective in almost all cases. Serious harmful interactions with medications. And for example, the biological plausibility, if somebody says this ancient exotic country X remedy for hypertension, just remember, nobody could measure hypertension until about 50 years ago, I think. But for me, stay physically active. And I think you should avoid the word exercise because it runs a lot of people off. You should stay physically active in every little bit. Better than not doing that. And walking is great. Stay socially engaged. That's a workout for your brain. Food, not too much, mostly plants. And I would like to turn it over now to Dr. Deliatos. Forgive my mispronunciation. I think I might have caught her by surprise.
No, you're good. If you go off screen share, I'll transition and go to my screen share. And I've been peeking at the chat and just Susan, Judy, make sure you can hear me okay. Is the audio good? Okay, I'm just gonna project and talk loudly. Yeah, so once
how do I, oh, I see.
Yep, stop slide share. Excellent. I'll stay on the big screen for a little bit and then I'm gonna go to slide share. Welcome everyone. I'm excited to make some comments here. I get the easy part talking about food, talking about supplements. Patients, friends ask me all the time. It's a huge topic and oftentimes there's so many things out there and of course we can't know the answers to everything, but like Dr. Tom, I'm not gonna pronounce your last name, said if you start digging deeper, there is no great literature for many of these things. And what I tell my patients sometimes is if there were, then we would be giving it to everybody. So you do want to be cautious, and not to mention that it's can get very expensive and also there's potential for interaction. So that's one of my concerns. So let me share my screen and I'm going to make my comments. Let's see what's going to come up here. Let's hide my emails. There we go. Okay. Can you guys see my slide? Okay, good. So I'm going to talk about food in the context of healthy living in general, and specifically this concept of lifestyle medicine, which looks at what we do habit-wise to keep our bodies healthy, our minds healthy, and to age well. So I personally am interested a lot in the food part, but I also recognize the importance of physical activity, stress management, having healthy relationships, having adequate and restorative sleep, and avoiding risky substances, all of which are important for our brains and our bodies. In the food realm, I'm going to talk about briefly this field called culinary medicine. which is a field in medicine that blends the art of food and cooking with the science of medicine. It's not only nutrition or biochemistry, it's not only the culinary arts, but it's actually a mixture, and it's a growing field. And I have a lot of colleagues who are both chefs and physicians or health professionals and in the culinary world who are trying to embrace this. And you don't have to be a health professional. You can think about what you're putting in your mouth and how you prepare your foods. And I'll give some examples as to incorporating this in your daily routine. Now, the reason that nutrition and culinary medicine is important is that poor nutrition can literally affect pretty much every single organ system, the heart, the lungs, not just, for example, high blood pressure or diabetes, but it can increase the risk of cancer. It can make sleep apnea worse. It can make reflux worse. So this is important pretty much for anybody and everybody. Even if you don't have any of these conditions, it's important to prevent these conditions. So just glancing at the chat, I'm not looking at the chat now, but as Dr. Tom was talking, there's a lot of questions out there, and I'm going to focus today on some general principles, which is eat more of these things on the left side of the screen, as in real foods, mostly plants, and legumes. If we have time, I'll touch on. And we generally agree as a healthcare community to try to not eat too much of these products, specifically sugar, packaged foods, deep fried foods, although there's a lot of nuances with different fad diets, and I'm not going to get into that today. In general, you want to try to eat foods that are healthier to crowd out the things that are less healthy. So let me just give you a thought exercise. I'm going to bring up this concept of recipe and prescription. So I am Greek, and in my Greek language, the word for recipe is sidai, and the word for a medical prescription, if you go and get a prescription for, say, a cholesterol lowering medication, that's also sidai. So it's the same word. So what that means is that in the past, people who were healers would give nutrition and say a recipe, not only for food, but also for medical conditions. So I'm not going to, it's not a forum to ask the group, but if you want to share in the chat, if anyone in a language that you might speak other than English, in English, it's a different language, it's a different word, recipe and prescription. But if you have any languages, you can put that. So just for fun. So I like to be experiential, and I'm going to pull up, I'm actually going to go off screen share now, and I will share with you. I am in my office today. Sometimes I broadcast from my kitchen where I have more space and more tools, but we're going to make do with my office. And what I'll show you today is a recipe for, you see my computer screen, my keyboard, and my recipe. I wiped it down so everything is clear, and I'm going to clean it afterwards. So this is a chia pudding recipe. Just for a show of hands, I can only see 20 people at a time, but does anyone eat chia on a regular basis? You can raise your hand. Okay, so at least on this first screen where I can see however many people, 25 people, only a few hands, and then the others are on other screens that I can't see. One of the fun parts about talking about food and doing it together is also sharing information. I do sessions like this with patients, students, peers, and it's always fun to cook with others. Pre-pandemic, we used to do this in person, but even on Zoom, sometimes it's fun to discuss and to share. So chia seeds are really small, and they're an ancient seed. And the principle of them, I don't know if you've, apparently some decades ago, they were more common, that if you add liquid, they solidify and they gel. So that's the premise of doing a chia seed recipe, chia pudding recipe. I'm going to use almond milk for my liquid. And then as you saw my colors, you see my colors? You note how I have red, orange, yellow, green, and a little bit of black. I like to have it colorful. when preparing food, whether it's for yourself alone or for your family or with kids, I have all these principles as well. And this is my principle, have fun, because it should be fun to eat well and to nourish our body and our brains well. So I like colors. This is a super simple recipe. I didn't print it because if you have a writing implement, you can write this down. 2 tablespoons of chia seeds. This is for 1 serving. And you can get chia seeds at most supermarkets. They come in a black and a white variety. They're not super cheap, but they're not super expensive. And if you buy them in bulk, they're good, and they're satiating. So you get a lot of calories for your money. Almond milk I've found works better. I've experimented with cow's milk and it doesn't quite gel just as well. So you can experiment, but you got your 2 tablespoons chia and a 1/2 cup of milk. So when I did this at home, some other tips of eating well and cooking well is you have to do a little plan and prep ahead. It sounds silly, but I might ask you, and again, you don't have to say, if you know what you're eating for dinner tonight. It's a lot easier to eat well if you think about it a little bit. And one of the other elements of eating well and planning and prepping ahead is a concept called batch cooking. Again, whether you're cooking for yourself or more than 1 person, if you're going to go through the effort to put this together, you might as well make 2 servings or 3 or 6 or however big you're feeding. Okay, so the ingredients. We already talked about 2 tablespoons, 1/2 cup, and that's kind of all you need to remember, because beyond that, the 3rd ingredient is optional, is a sweetener. You can use honey or a little bit of sugar. And whenever you add the sweetener, you control the sweetness. It doesn't have to be too sweet. So I'm mixing my chia and my almond milk, and I'm going to try not to spill it on my keyboard because that'll be gross. And brought my little baby whisk here. So that's part 2. And as you see, the chia seeds, they kind of, if you don't mix them, they're going to go down. So you want to mix it a little bit. And then the fun part is choosing a cute little container. This is a container that I chose. It's a little small, but it fits everything. And then adding fruit. So I am going to add a little bit of red and correct. I can't eat and talk, otherwise I'm going to choke. So I'm sorry. I apologize for that. There's red. Yellow is the banana. Banana is a great sweetener. If you ever add banana to whether it's oatmeal or some other hot cereal, you don't need any added sweetener. So I got a little banana, a little strawberry. For color, I used green apple. So I'm going to add a little green apple. And all right, this is a quiz. I'm not going to add this, but who knows what this is? You can put it in the chat if you know what it is. And then the moderators can, it's about the size of a strawberry if you want reference. Okay, that's just for color because I like color. And then these are a lot of fun. And it's hard. Yeah, that is a kumquat. You're right. It's not spelled right, but you're right. That is a kumquat. These are, you can write down, anyone want to guess what these are? These are also, I'll just tell you what they are. They're chocolate nibs. They're basically cacao nibs. They're basically chocolate without the sugar. So it's completely bitter if you eat it on its own. However, if you add a little bit into your mixture here, it almost tastes like chocolate, and then it's sweet from the banana. And if you add a little other sweetener, that it almost tastes like you're eating chocolate. Okay, now I have to mix this fast because see, it's already starting to settle because I was talking too much. So I am now going to put this mixture, hang on one second. Well equipped in my kitchen/office here. I'm going to just make sure all the chia seeds aren't at the bottom. So this is the opposite of batch cooking. I'm doing mini cooking in my office. So if I did this right, this should fit in here. And if not, I overflowed it a little bit. No, it mostly all fit. So this is what it looks like. And you see all the fruits at the bottom. I'm going to use my knife to mix this all up. And you do want to get the ratio right, because if it is too watery, then it won't set well, but it still tastes good. So this is pretty much it. And then when I did this at home yesterday, I made like 5 servings, which I'll show you on now, but then that way I have for yesterday's breakfast, today's breakfast, and I will show you what that looks like now. Okay, so you put that in the fridge, you let it settle for a few hours or overnight, and then it's good for a few days. And I'm going to show you what it looks like. Try not to make a mess. So you pull it out of your fridge and ta-da, that's kind of what we made with a little color on top. And then the fun part, let's make sure this is okay, is you can turn it upside down and it doesn't fall out. So this is good because I can pack it and not worry that it's going to spill. Of course, I cover it a little bit. And again, I'm not going to eat food while talking so I don't choke, but I highly recommend experimenting with this just for fun. There's one caveat with chia seeds. As with anything, you don't want to overdo things. Like a little bit is good, but a lot doesn't necessarily mean it's better. And you don't want to eat chia seeds dry, because if you eat them dry and they get stuck in your esophagus, they can expand there and that can be a problem. So you want to add whatever liquid you're going to use ahead of time, and then eat them. So they're good for, you can add them to your cereal or your oatmeal or your smoothies, and they get absorbed and then you swallow them. So that's one. Let me see. Lydia always eats while she's talking. Someone said that. Yes, you do not want to do that. Let me see if I had 2 more comments before we move to Q&A. I had a session with my patients recently where we talked about good protein sources. And you guys have Tom Big. Is that intentional? Okay.
What happened?
just wanted to make sure. So just so people can see this, because these are small, and you guys can, I did this as a quiz. So here's another quiz for you, is legumes. How well do you know your legumes? So if you look at this, hold on. This is a 15 bean soup. Hold on. Well,
There we go. That's
see all
better.
those beans?
Yes.
If people for fun want to put into the chat, what are the, see if you can come up with 15 unique beans. I'll tell you the answers afterwards, but here, I'll leave that there for a second. But that was another dish I demoed, but that I need a kitchen for. But the tip that is an important tip that don't underestimate this one is, when you make certain foods, including soups or legumes or even certain other things, you can freeze them. And if you batch cook and freeze, this is my 15 bean soup that this talk is after lunch, so I already ate it. However, that is another good way to make sure that you plan ahead, make batch cooking, and have healthy food to eating. Yep, I see some beans there, so you can feel free to add as many as you want, and I'll give you some answers later. I'm going to stop there because I know there's a lot of Q&A, and I'm going to let the moderators throw out the questions because there's a lot there, but thank you everyone for your attention.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Helen and Tom. So I have a question quickly, Helen, for you, and that is, are there any helpful websites that you trust that have really good nutritional recipes that are in line with the principles of culinary medicine? And if so, if you could put them in the chat, that would be great.
All right, I'll work on that in the next minute and I'll put them on.
That's fine. That's fine. So I'm going to go to Dr. Finucane because one of the comments that came in very early that I think is important is someone asked, someone has a wife who is a registered dietitian. And the registered dietitian says that supplements are not necessary for healthy adults if you eat a healthy diet of fruits and vegetables, less red meat, exercise, and keep fit. And so I would just like Dr. Finucane to answer that, because she's recommending that supplements may be okay if you have a specific ailment, but otherwise, if you're eating a healthy diet, are you in pretty good shape?
I think she's exactly correct, exactly right on the button. And there are the average American is not lacking in any single, undernutrition in healthy Americans is unheard of practically. Some people have very restricted diets, but unless you have poor access to food, most people really do not need and are wasting their money to get supplements. And there's a funny thing with it. We thought that calcium supplementation was important, but now we realize that calcium in your diet is very important, but supplemental calcium, unless for some reason your diet is restricted, is at best neutral and maybe harmful. And then there's another one. So this is a few years ago, beta carotene, which is a precursor to vitamin A. And it was observed that people who ate diets very high in beta carotene, which is the compound that makes carrots orange, had very low rates of cancer. So a study was done where people got supplemental beta carotene, people at high risk for lung cancer. And it turns out that the rate of cancer was higher in the people who took the supplement. So the eating a lot of it was associated with goodness, but it wasn't the beta carotene, because if you gave it to people as a supplement, it increased the risk of cancer. So for me, a balanced diet and some physical activity is the right answer. Yes.
Okay, thank you. A couple of other questions about different supplements. So there's a question about, are there any supplements that help alleviate stiff fascia? We've also had questions about supplements for tinnitus. And there was one, and the other one that I just would like you to address is the value of adding probiotics.
Fascia, when someone has knee pain, we don't usually know what it is. We sort of make up stuff. And some people think that it's a fascial problem, and they try chondroitin, and which is made from ground up joints, and people take it. And that's another one of the chats said, why is it relevant that jellyfish don't have brains? And it's in the same line of thinking as if you have a bad knee, eat some knees. If you have a bad brain, eat some brain. And we don't even meet that level of sophistication. Then there was another part to that.
Tinnitus.
No evidence that I'm aware of.
Okay.
For any supplement that improves.
And what about, and I'm going to ask this of you and also Helen, but what about probiotics?
Helen, you want to go first?
I like food, so I think I prefer to eat, for example, lots of fiber, which is what our bacteria in our gut want, yogurt, which also has healthy bacteria. And it's similar that there's not a ton of data for a lot of conditions, and there are certain data, but I don't know them offhand. So I don't have like a specific probiotic to prescribe for a specific condition. The marketing is out there, but the data is not quite there yet. That's usually my response. I'm curious, Tom, to hear what you're going to say.
The same. There are one or two studies that show if you're about to start antibiotics, you should eat a lot of yogurts, but you don't have, there are other studies that don't show that benefit. And it doesn't, why call it probiotics? Yogurt has exactly what would help a gut.
Yeah. Helen, can you give some examples? Because I think what you said about fiber is so important. Can you give some examples of easy ways to add fiber to your diet?
Yeah, you know what? I'm going to pull up on, everyone here has Patient Gateway, right? Because there's a great way, if you give me a moment and come back to me in a moment, and I'll share a screen, how to access a lot of this information. I put in the chat a ton of websites and I endorse all of them. I've vetted them. So you can, what's good for websites, unless the organizers send them afterwards, once the chat disappears, you won't be able to see them. You just want to either click on them so they open in another browser, or they're too long to write down, so you can't do that reasonably. And then I'm going to show you how to find, that exact question, Susan, on Patient Gateway. So come back to me in a minute.
Okay. All right. I think we talked about, the reason I knew the answer about Prevagen is that it's a medication or something, a supplement that I think my husband asked me about daily because of all the ads. And so I was very happy to understand what the evidence is, because I have to say that anything I see advertised on TV, I'm skeptical about. As we are one of only 2 countries in the world that actually allow direct-to-consumer advertising for medications, which often leads people to ask for things that may not really help them. But I'm going to see if there are any other questions. I think we got some really good answers to the bean question. And another question that I think is actually quite important is there anything that is helpful in preventing wet macular degeneration? Anything in a diet, anything supplements that might be helpful there?
Yes, there's a combination of vitamins, and there's a product that you can buy that I believe it reduces the rate of progression, but it might also reduce the chance of developing it in the first place. And I think the evidence is pretty solid that this is worth taking. One formulation of it is called Ocuvite. I have no conflict of interest, but that's the name I remember. And it's based on a study, a legitimate scientific study that was written, peer-reviewed, and published, and then was commented on. Preservision. Thank you. There you go. And Helen, do you have an opinion about?
Sorry, I was looking up how to find advice and it's not coming up on.
Okay.
So I missed the question. But if it's for eye supplements, I'm not sure either. I'm just looking on Patient Gateway. There's a patient menu and you can find patient care advice. And if you put in fiber, usually you can find things there, but I am having a hard time pulling that up on my screen in order to share that. So I apologize.
Okay, so I'm going to go back actually to both of you, and because we're getting a lot of questions about food and supplements that may help with osteoporosis. And also if you could say a little bit about how does calcium cause harm, especially for people that have been prescribed it for bone density issues?
I can start with the calcium, like Tom said earlier, and this is a general principle. If some is good, that doesn't mean more is better. So too much calcium, especially in supplement form, can potentially affect the heart. So you definitely don't want to just take supplements. Calcium is found in a lot of foods, both dairy sources and non-dairy sources. And there's great, if you look at some of those websites, food sources of calcium, you'll get some listing of those. It's hard to get all of it through food sometimes. So taking an extra 500 milligrams once a day. So the general number that's easy to remember is like 1,000 milligrams of calcium, or if you're postmenopausal, 1,200. But if you remember about 1,000, that's generally where to aim for. So some with food, maybe 500 through supplements. And vitamin D is also very important for bones. So 1,000 of vitamin D per day is a good thing to do as well. And that's hard to get through food alone. A little bit of sun can help with vitamin D, but that's hard for us because we're in the latitude that we're in and it's foggy. So calcium, vitamin D. I think that was the question, Susan. Was there some other
Yes,
part?
it was. And I just want to see, Dr. Russell is with us today as well. I just want to see if he wants to add anything about that.
Yes, so I just did want to speak to, and this is harkening back to our last town hall, that, you know, it isn't just the isolate of the nutrient or the electrolyte that we're looking for, but probably the whole context, how it's given to us in the food, that is actually the most helpful. One thing that is very important to understand is that a lot of proprietary blend vitamins have the potential to give you toxic doses of fat-soluble vitamins, such as vitamins A, E, D, and K. And while a little bit of something is a good thing, a lot of it, out of proportion to how it would be presented in nutrition, can actually be quite dangerous. And I think that many of us on the clinical side have actually had to intervene with patients who are they think this is the right thing to do. I'm just trying to stay healthy. And you're like, well, actually, no, this is causing massive abnormalities in your blood tests. So, you know, we don't make vitamin D in New England from November to April. So a daily dose of vitamin D, 1,000 to 2,000 international units, is reasonable. But taking mega doses is actually quite harmful. And then similarly, with some of the proprietary blends that are very expensive, they have high doses of what are called water-soluble vitamins, meaning these are vitamins that don't accumulate in your fat, but instead are eliminated. And we often will joke, you are making very expensive urine, because whatever your body could absorb, it's the difference between being able to drink from a straw versus drinking from a fire hydrant. It just goes past the body and is not absorbed. So always being mindful. One thing that probably Dr. Finucane has told us in our training, moderation in everything has yet to be disproven.
Including moderation and moderation.
Exactly. You got to treat yourself every now and then.
But I'm pretty sure that the United States Preventive Services Task Force in women over 65 does not recommend supplementation, although they don't work from Boston in the winter. But it seems that calcium turnover in women is at the age of 65, the daily calcium loss is pretty small. So as far as for all of our discussants and everybody who's joined us, there's a site called the United States Preventive Services Task Force, which gives really useful information and the scientific basis behind it. And they don't recommend less than 400 of D or less than a gram of calcium, and they don't make any for or against recommendation of higher doses. So I think the data are still a little unstable as to what we should do about, especially postmenopausal women, high risk of fracture. What can we do to help? It's not clear that vitamin D and calcium is the right answer yet, in my opinion.
And we can actually, I'm glad you brought that up, because one of the members of the U.S. Preventive Task Force is Dr. Michael Berry, who is in the Division of General Internal Medicine at Mass General. And we can get it straight from him about what their recommendations are. And
Susan, will
them.
you do that? That would be
Yeah.
great to find out.
Yeah. Yes. So I think we are at time. I think we have one last question. I'm just going to ask both of you, if you may want to respond. Talk to us a little bit about the value of turmeric and black pepper with inflammation.
Add as much as you can to your food.
Yeah, they taste good.
The point is, it's much better to eat everything good in our fruits, vegetables, spices, herbs, instead of trying to take it in a pill. Is that a good summary point?
That's my general philosophy personally.
Me too. Me too. There is no secret sauce, you know. Eat a balanced a diet of healthy, real, actual food, not too much, mostly plants.
All right. Well, thank you so much. This has been really interesting. It makes me want to run right down to the kitchen and start cooking.
Yes.
So thanks to all. Dr. Levine, do you want to make any closing remarks?
I want to thank everybody for coming, and I think the number of people that we have on this town hall goes to show how important this is and how much people think about it. And just to reiterate important points is that we are all going to age, whether we like it or not. We will slow down, and certain things, the temple starts to crack no matter what, just like any beautiful piece of architecture that you see in the world. And that there is no way to stop that. However, there are ways to make yourself stronger, which is exactly Michael Pollan's view. And I agree with that. Eating a balanced diet, getting exercise. There's no way better to build bones than to walk, jump, hop, or whatever you can if you want to really pound those bones and build up, that bone density, and not to spend tons and tons and tons and tons of money on things that have not been proven. And there are ways to find whether things have been proven to help or not. And taking vitamin B12, if you have vitamin B12 deficiency, which is a disease and has a cause to it, that's one different thing than eating vitamin B12 in everything that you do, just like this. So I think no one's going to be harmed if they take a vitamin every day, but I really agree with a lot of what has been said here by Tom and Helen and also Matt. And we'd much rather have you not take supplements that cause interactions with many, many, many needed medicines that you're on, because just because they're supplements doesn't mean they don't have interactions. I think that's the other take home point from this. There are many things that interact with things that we take.
Well, the last thing I'll say is that I know I've always known that we're all going to age, and it's better than the alternative. And looking at everyone that joins us on these town halls, I think we're all in good company. So thank you all for being with us today. We look forward to seeing you next month, and enjoy St. Patrick's Day.